What happens when a journalist, convinced he has the upper hand, attempts to humiliate Tiffany Trump at an exclusive high-profile gala? He expects an easy takedown, but what he doesn't see coming is Barron Trump's sharp intellect and unshakable composure. A response so powerful, it leaves the entire room in stunned silence. Stay tuned, because this is a moment you won't want to miss. The Washington, D.C. Philanthropy Gala was in full swing. The grand ballroom shimmered under the soft glow of chandeliers, the hum of conversation blending with the clinking of champagne glasses. Elite guests, dressed in designer suits and dazzling gowns, mingled effortlessly. Among them, Tiffany Trump radiated elegance in a sleek evening dress, gracefully engaging with event sponsors. Standing nearby, her younger brother, Barron Trump, now towering over most of the guests at 6 feet 7 inches, maintained his usual quiet confidence. He preferred to stay out of the spotlight, but when his sister needed him, he was always there. What they didn't know was that lurking in the crowd was Michael Reynolds, a journalist for the Daily Progressive, notorious for his aggressive tactics and staunchly anti-Trump stance. He had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Armed with a camera crew discreetly positioned and a list of loaded questions, Reynolds was prepared to ambush Tiffany and create a viral spectacle. He had already drafted the headline in his mind: Tiffany Trump exposed at charity gala. As Tiffany turned to speak with another guest, Reynolds saw his chance. Wearing his signature smug grin, microphone in hand, he stepped forward. "Miss Trump," he said loudly enough to draw attention, "can I ask you a quick question about your family's role in social issues?" Ever composed, Tiffany nodded politely. "Of course." Reynolds wasted no time. "Many believe that your family's wealth gives you an unfair advantage in philanthropy. How do you respond to accusations that the Trumps use charity events to boost their own public image rather than to help others?" A hush fell over the immediate crowd. Tiffany's smile wavered for just a moment, but before she could respond, Barron stepped forward. His deep, steady voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "With all due respect," Barron said, locking eyes with Reynolds, "would you ask the same question about other philanthropists? Or is it just the Trump name that concerns you?" Reynolds smirked, believing he still held the upper hand. "Well, your family is known for prioritizing wealth and business over social issues. Wouldn't you agree?" The crowd tensed, sensing a confrontation. But Barron remained calm. Instead of reacting emotionally, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and scrolled briefly. "Interesting perspective," he said, holding up an article from the Daily Progressive itself. An article showcasing how the Trump family had donated millions to children's hospitals and veteran programs. The crowd murmured in surprise. "You see," Barron continued, "I believe philanthropy should be measured by its impact, not by the headlines it generates. Wouldn't you agree?" Reynolds shifted uncomfortably but pressed on. "But surely you understand the perception of privilege here." Barron didn't hesitate. "Privilege," he said smoothly, his tone neutral but firm, "is the opportunity to make a difference. What matters is how you use it. My sister has worked tirelessly in law and charity, yet you focus on assumptions rather than facts." Reynolds, flustered but unwilling to back down, tried again. "Isn't it fair to say your family's position gives you an advantage that ordinary Americans don't have?" Barron's eyes narrowed slightly. "And isn't it fair to say that every person has unique opportunities, and it's their responsibility to use them wisely? My family chooses to use our platform to support causes we care about." A wave of whispers moved through the crowd. Reynolds, sensing his grip slipping, attempted to shift the focus. "So, you're saying there's no privilege involved?" Barron remained composed. "I'm saying privilege is what you make of it. You can stand on the sidelines and criticize, or you can step up and contribute." Reynolds opened his mouth to respond, but found himself at a loss for words. Tiffany glanced at her brother, admiration in her eyes. The tables had turned. The cameras were still rolling, but instead of capturing a viral takedown of the Trump family, they had recorded a poised, articulate Barron standing firm in his beliefs. Reynolds, visibly flustered, attempted one last desperate attempt to regain control. Some might argue that your family's wealth shields you from the realities most Americans face. Do you think the average person can relate to your experiences? Barron smiled politely, sensing the desperation in the journalist's tone. I believe challenges come in different forms for everyone, he said. But the key isn't comparing experiences. It's how we use them to create positive change. The crowd nodded in agreement, impressed by Barron's maturity and ability to steer the conversation toward meaningful discussion. Tiffany remained composed, but a proud smile crept onto her face as her brother continued to outmaneuver the journalist. Reynolds, desperate to shift momentum, took another approach. Isn't it fair to say that your family's controversies overshadow any good deeds? Barron didn't flinch. Every public figure, especially those striving to make an impact, faces criticism. But what matters most is the work being done. Have you looked at the scholarship programs, the veteran support initiatives, or the millions donated to healthcare and education? Reynolds hesitated. Barron pressed on. Facts are stubborn things, he said, holding up his phone again. And when you focus only on half the picture, you end up misleading your audience. The crowd erupted into soft murmurs, some nodding in approval. Reynolds, now sweating under the pressure, tried to deflect. This isn't about donations, it's about influence and power. Barron nodded thoughtfully. Influence can be used for good or bad. We choose to use ours to help others, to contribute, and to support meaningful causes. And what about you, Mr. Reynolds? How do you use your influence? Reynolds froze. The tables had officially turned. I report the news, he finally muttered. Barron leaned in slightly, his voice calm but carrying undeniable weight. And does reporting the news include presenting both sides fairly? Or just the side that gets more clicks? A hush fell over the crowd. Reynolds fumbled with his microphone, forcing a nervous chuckle. Well, we all have a job to do. Barron nodded. Exactly, and I respect that. But with influence comes responsibility. Don't you think it's fair to ensure your audience gets the full picture rather than a one-sided narrative? The journalist was now visibly uncomfortable. The audience, once passive onlookers, were now firmly in Barron's corner. Tiffany finally spoke, placing a gentle hand on Barron's arm. I think my brother has made an excellent point, she said with grace. We welcome honest conversations, but fairness and respect should always come first. Reynolds, realizing he had lost control, forced a tight smile. Thank you for your time, he muttered before hastily retreating into the crowd. The moment he disappeared, the room erupted into applause. Guests approached Barron, shaking his hand. That night, social media exploded with videos of the encounter. Hashtags like Jocker Barron shuts them down and facts over fiction trended within hours. Even media outlets critical of the Trumps had to admit, Barron's calm and factual approach was commendable. And as for Reynolds, his attempted ambush had backfired spectacularly. Sometimes, the best way to answer arrogance isn't with outrage, but with intelligence, poise, and the undeniable power of truth.